Hi, today's video we're going to do a floating shelf. This is the actual finished shelf at this point. Unfortunately, we're not going to see it installed because I am not doing the install, so I won't have any video or picture of that. So, first step is to take our rough lumber. We're using white oak on this project, and we'll chop it up on the table saw into smaller pieces so it's easier to joint and plane, get it thicker. Obviously, the shorter pieces you make, you lose the least amount when you're joining and planing. And you don't need to use a table saw. You can use anything you want. Any saw will work. I just happen to be using the table saw because it's there. Alright, now time for jointing. This is the next step. I've shown this before, but basically we're just going to run the boards over the jointer and flatten them out. Get them straight and get the cup out. Maybe some of them take a couple passes, sometimes one pass, depends on how cupped it is. They're all different. As you can see, let's run them flat first. Standard technique of mine. I usually do the flat side first, get it flat, and then I will lift it up and do the edge like I'm doing right here. Pass or two over that, and it gets that edge straight. You don't have to do that at the same time. You can do it later. It's just I was found that it's easier to do it while it's the jointer's running and you're there instead of having to come back after you plane it. You can certainly do it that way as well. Okay, now we're moving on to the planer. We're going to start running these boards through to get them parallel and flat and thin them down. I've shown this process before, but we'll show it again. I'm trying to, not trying to repeat everything every time when I do these videos. I'm just trying to show my process, and I'm doing this start to finish. I'm trying not to leave anything out on this one. So anyhow, standard planer, running it through, smoothing it out. Sometimes the first couple passes, because the bottom is a little bit rough, we'll grab on the planer a little bit, but that can be adjusted by just raising the bed rollers. I just didn't raise them so much on this. Bigger planers have bed rollers, and actually the bigger ones, like this one, has powered bed rollers, so it actually has a second motor underneath there that powers the bed rollers on this one. There's two motors on this planer. Okay, so now we are ready to lay out our panels to be glued. And basically I'm just going to kind of go over these pieces of wood and try to figure out the best configuration for how it's going to look the best. Just try to get the grain and color as close as possible. Like that one looks great, probably because it came off the same board. I'm marking it, so I have reference marks. I just put a line in there, and then I put an F and a me on there, so when I run over the jointer I know which side hits the fence and which side hits my side. And the reason you do that is because it allows to keep the panel flat when you glue it up. So here we are. We're going to use the little jointer today for our edge joining. Sometimes I use a big one, sometimes I use a little one. Just straightening out that edge. It's already been ripped, I believe. No, maybe I didn't rip these. I haven't ripped these ones yet, no. Just clean up the edge first. And it's pretty quick. Doesn't take very much time to just straighten out the edge and get them ready for the glue up. And obviously if this panel was bigger, I would not use this jointer because the beds are only good for about 3-foot pieces on this one because it's a little guy. I'd use the bigger one behind it. Alright, time to glue up our panels. I've actually ripped the panels. I think I did it off camera, so you want to keep these parallel because I'm going to glue both of these boards together in one shot. This uses less clamps, takes up less space. There's no other reason why I do it that way, but that's why we're doing it this way. So, but the boards have to be parallel, otherwise the clamp pressure will not transfer to each other. Now, what's important here is you only glue the sides that you are gluing. And as you can see here, I'm going to glue one side and two sides, but the side in the middle does not get glue. And if you put glue in that side, you're going to have a wide panel, which in this case wouldn't be a huge deal. You could just run it through the table saw and rip it apart. But anyhow, try not to make extra work for ourselves. Just brushing out the glue with a painter's brush. I do a couple ways I do this. I don't always do it. You know, woodworking is one of those things where you can do it a million ways and still get to the same result. Alright, so now we're going to put the board together. See, no glue there. And now we're going to put this one together. We'll clamp it up. Tighten the clamps. Kind of line it up as best you can. Doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to cut this down later. As you can see, as I tighten the clamps, the glue starts to squeeze out all over the place. That's exactly what you want. As long as that's happening, it means your glue joint will be tight. And tight is our objective. We do not want gaps in our joint. And that's all. As long as your joiner is set properly, you will not get gaps. So now, so you put 2 clamps on the bottom on this one, and I'm going to end up using, I think, 4 clamps on it. So you always want to put clamps on the top as well. So the reason you do this is because inherently the clamps will bow the panel a little bit up. And when you put the pressure on the opposite side, it will pull it back down and pull it back where you want it. Keep it flatter. And that's how we do it. Alright, and there's our finished glued up panels out of the clamps. See, we got glue squeeze out and lines, and they're going to get ready to go back through the planer. And here we are. We're going to take our glued up panels and run them to the planer quick again, and this will just flatten them out, clean them up. I know there's just some train of thought about, oh, you don't want to run glue through the planer and stuff. It's really not a big deal. Glue is hard on planer knives, but if you're cutting under it, you're okay. Like, so if you were just actually planing the glue itself, it'll beat up the planer knives. But if you cut underneath it, like into the wood, and just pull it off, it really doesn't do a whole lot to the knives. It's okay. And this planer has carbide knives on it anyway, so it's not even like a huge deal for this one. But anyway, most people don't have a planer quite this large. Okay, so now that we've got our panels ready to go, we're going to lay out. So actually, to make this thicker, we're going to sandwich in a piece of, actually using poplar. You can use whatever. I just had poplar laying around. I have white oak too. It doesn't really matter. I could have done it. It's never going to get seen. So what we're going to do is we're going to lay out some lines here to figure out the size of our piece that we're going to need to put in here. And we're going to stack laminate this block. It's a technique that it's been around for a while, but I will at some point make a video about how to do a stack lamination and a carved piece. I don't know when it'll be. It probably won't be anytime soon because I've got a lot of stuff coming up. Probably won't be, but we'll see. So anyway, we're going to lay out our lines here. And this will tell me the size of my piece of poplar I'm going to cut because we want to keep this cut to final size, because we don't want it to move. Or you need a final size because once this is all glued together, it's very difficult to manipulate. It's a lot easier to cut it before. So now I've cut my piece of poplar to the size I need, and we're going to glue it in. Again, just regular yellow glue. This whole project's all yellow glue. And we'll put it on. And we'll get our paint roller and we'll smooth it out. It makes it a lot easier. It will still slip when you roll it out like this, but it slips a lot less, which is always a good thing. Because again, if it floats around and moves around, it's not gonna work properly because you're gonna mount this shelf is gonna get mounted to the wall with some cleats, and it'll slide over it and just hold it on there. It's a 3-sided shelf. It goes between 3 walls. So now we get it where I want our pencil lines. And I'll grab the staple gun and we'll pop a couple staples in there, and the staples don't do anything more than just hold it from slipping. They're just there to hold it from slipping while I glue it together. I don't put them in the front edge because I know this is going to get jointed. I don't want to be running staples over my joiner. So anyway, we get our staples in, holds that in place so it won't move. Put the glue on the top. Same process as before. We're just going to glue the top here. A little glue, roll it out. Now, I can't put staples in the top. Well, I guess I could, but I don't generally do work like that. The easy way would be to put some pins in the top and fill them, but I don't like doing that, so I like to try to keep it there. So by holding this up flat and kind of getting it lined up right where I want it, and being that it's not a huge, heavy setup of glue, and we're just using this board to line up the ends as best we can, it's going to move a little bit, and it'll get... This actually is oversized, and once it's done, it'll get trimmed, so that's not a huge deal, but I do try to keep it as close as possible. So now you get a little bit of pressure here, not a lot, and this pressure will keep it somewhat flat on the bottom. It's actually upside down where the face of it is sitting on the bench right now. So I'll get a couple clamps on here like this, kind of tack it in place, and this generally keeps it a little flatter. And then we'll set it down on the bench flat, and then we just finish clamping it. I don't know how many clamps I use on this one. I mean, when you're doing stack lamination, the more clamps you use, the better. I know a lot of people don't have as many clamps as I do. That's one of my things, but I use a lot of clamps on all of it. Is it necessary? Probably not. I mean, honestly, it doesn't really even matter on this because you'll never see these joints anyway. It all gets covered. It's more just when I do this, I just have a process and I do every piece the same way. I could probably just put 2-3 clamps on this and it wouldn't matter. I mean, because if you get a slight gap in the front, it doesn't matter, it gets covered. And, you know, because there's going to be another piece that you'll see coming up here being put on the front of this block. And as we get this all clamped up. So yeah, I guess sometimes I'm a little bit obsessed with putting clamps on things, but I think probably have 10 on this, which would be about right normally. Oh, I guess I needed one more. All right, there's our finished block with all the clamps on it. And as you can see, that front edge is shifted a little bit. It's not perfectly lined up, but that's fine because, again, it's going to go over the joiner and that'll flatten it all out so the front piece will fit on perfectly. All right, here's the piece glued up. Apparently I did not make any footage of the actual joiner, but you've seen the joiner, just goes over the joiner. So again, we're going to roll out with a roller. Don't want a super heavy coat on here again, because honestly the more glue you put on, the more it's going to slip. So the piece I've made for this front edge is oversized a little bit. I mean, it is oversized. I also, and I didn't do it on this one, and I was doing this more for like a DIY type project. It's a little more complicated, but a lot of times most of the time I do these, I'll miter these. The front edge will actually get mitered on here, so you don't see any of it. It's a lot more complicated, and where this was going, it wasn't needed. So honestly, now I'm just putting the front edge on. Now this piece is oversized a little bit. You want it to overhang the edge. It's a lot easier to trim down the piece that you're applying, the 3/4, than to bring the shelf down to the thickness. So here it's putting the last clamp on. Let that dry for a little bit. Alrighty, so let it dry, and we're just taking a hand plane and taking the lip off that's heavy. There's a bunch of ways you could do this. You could use a router, flush trim bit. You can run it through a table saw, get it close and sand it. I just happen to feel like using my hand plane today. So, alright, so we got it flat. Now we're running it through the wide belt sander. This will sand it all up and make it all one solid smooth piece. I know everybody does not have a wide belt sander, but this is how I do it. You could also use a hand sander, like a random orbit sander. You can run it through the planer. There's a lot of other ways to do it. I'm just showing you how I do it, because this is the fastest way to do it. Okay, we're gonna run the edge on the edge sander right now. Quickly cleans up that edge we put on it, sand it out smooth. And these big machines are just time savers, really. I mean, you still got to go back and do handwork on them, but it's a lot faster. So now it's time to, let's give it a quick sand with a random orbit sander. Takes out, I mean, there's very fine scratches from the wide belt sander, not really, but these will take those out. You don't need to do this, I just do it anyway. It's another step in my process. Just give it a quick once over, doesn't take a whole lot. And now, here's what's very important, is now we got to break the edges, and breaking them on a 45 is very important. You can round them over with, I'm breaking at 45. You can also round them over with a sanding block. Very important to do this, because if you don't, especially with woods like oak, it can something can grab it and it'll rip it, and then you have chips and it just doesn't look good. All right, now we're gonna spray these real quick here. First process is blow it off. This is a raw block. We're spraying it with lacquer. Just a raw, ready to go first coat. It's a pretty simple process. I generally spray the ends, try to keep the moisture best at bay, try to keep it as even as possible. Just work my way around, starting from the top down. Just a quick spray. And this card is nice because, as you'll see, just a second, I will spin it around. I spray finish just about everything. Gets best results. A trick to a good spray finish is, as you can see, consistent speed, consistent distance, and it takes a lot of practice. Once you get it figured out, it's very easy, and it's a great way to do a finish. That's the first coat. Let it dry. And then it'll be done. Alright, now this is the blocks that are going to be mounted to the wall. They'll be cut, mounted to the wall, and the shelf will slip over it. I get them a little bit skinny. I want a little bit of play because, as we know, nothing ever works out perfectly. If you make them tight, the shelf probably won't go on. So, I mean, they're probably a 32nd of an inch thinner. They're not much. You don't want them too sloppy. Okay, we have completed our shelves. It has our lacquer on it, and this is it ready to go to be picked up. Appreciate you watching, and if you could like, subscribe for me, and share this video, and get some people watching these videos. I'll make more. If you're interested in the content I make and how I work in my shop day to day and as a professional woodworker, I'd be glad to make more videos. Thanks. Have a great day.